And good morning. We are live on Forging the Falcons. We are live on Facebook and YouTube on Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons and on Scott Kennedy Sports on Facebook. And then on my YouTube channel on /C/Scott Kennedy. So welcome in, everyone. As you're coming in, please make sure and hit that like button and that share button, subscribe. If you happen to see me on Twitter, give it a retweet. You can find me at Twitter at Scout Kennedy or the All Falcons Twitter page. If you see it on either one of those, go ahead and give it a retweet and start sharing and seeing if we can get more people to come in. It will be just me this morning. Nick is somewhere off on a mountain doing his mountain thing. So we're going to have to just hang out here amongst us Falcons fans and anybody that wants to come and talk some Falcons this morning on a victory Monday as the Falcons get the 23-20 home win over the Cleveland Browns. We're going to talk all kinds of stuff, and I want to lean on the chat a little bit when it's by myself. The more active the chat is, the easier it is for me, and frankly, the better the conversation. That way I know we are talking about what you want to talk about instead of what I just want to talk about, but we'll hit on some of those things. I titled the Monday episodes kind of the gut reaction. It's not really the gut reaction because you got a day to sleep on it, but it's also the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was some good, there was some bad, and there was some ugly. Much more good than the rest of it, though, which is nice. It's nice being able to come on a Monday and not just talking about moral victories or this is how things are looking up. Here's how things are looking better. You can do that, but it's also nice to do that with a dub. So let's say good morning to some folks in the chat here. Aiden London coming in. Aiden wrote the preview on Friday for All Falcons. You can check it out. He does a great job already. Youngster, up-and-coming young journalist at Temple University. Said the Falcons are tied for first place in the division. Life is good. He says, I apologize for predicting against the Browns. I'm never picking against them again. Picking against the Falcons. Yeah, picking for the Browns can be a dangerous thing. I picked the Browns too. The reason why was because of their running game, and maybe I underestimated their or overestimated their reserves on defensive line. You know, they're missing 3 or 4 of their defensive line, and the Falcons took advantage of it. When they decided to run the ball, that was one of my goods, was the Falcons running game, specifically when they said, you know what, we haven't moved the ball. I think Marcus Mariota is like one of his last 12 plays for -5 yards after the touchdown. Let's just run the damn ball. And they ran it right down their throats. Caleb Huntley comes in. I'm pretty sure that was his debut. I mean, he's been on the team. He's been in and out of the practice squad, but I feel like that was the first time he'd actually gotten carries. Guy comes in and runs like a veteran. He just beast moded it. Came in, run behind his pads, nice little one cuts where he's cutting up through the line and following his pads. Keith Smith, fullback, blocking his ass off. So not just the offensive line. We'll get to the offensive line, trust me, because I gave the offensive line so much crap last year that I want to just keep shoveling praise on them for the most part this year because they've looked so much better. Luke Wright coming in. Say good morning. Good morning, Luke. Cynthia Branson Mathis. Cynthia, good morning. How are you? So Falcons always been my team. I'm a true fan no matter the outcome. You know, and that's how it has to be with the Falcons fans. You know, it's if I know I always after the many losses, I always made sure I wore my Falcons shirt on Monday. It's like, oh, you're pretty brave wearing that. It's like, listen, if you're only a fan during the good times, you wouldn't be a fan. And that goes for any sport, let alone a team in Atlanta. Franklin Peterson, good morning, Scott. That was a good win for the Falcons. That was a good win. I mentioned last week, you know, the question was how many games could this team win? And, you know, are they still going to win, you know, more than 5, more than 6? And my prediction at the time was just like, you're going to be underdogs in the next 4 games. And you were a home dog. It was 1 point, but you were a home dog to the Browns. You got the win. Okay. Next game coming up, you're probably going to be an underdog again. Can you sneak out another one? It might be a little tough for this next time, but to go 2-2, even the first time you've won back-to-back games under Arthur Smith. Now going back to Arthur Smith, I might jump around all over the place on this one. You'll have to apologize. I'll have to apologize in advance. But talking about Arthur Smith. And I think the Falcons fans are so shell shocked by any blown leads that we just kind of assume that this is, this happens all the time. No, it doesn't. As undermanned as this team is, and I won't get into it again right now. If you've watched me before, you know how undermanned based on the salary cap, the depth, the 1-year contracts, and all this. How undermanned this team has been under Arthur Smith with salary cap hell. He is now 9-4 in 1-score games. 9-4 in 1-score games. I'll take that. That to me is getting it done in the close games. Now, why are their record, why were they 7-10 last year? Because they were outmatched. And if they couldn't keep it close, they were getting blown out. So, this is, I said over the summer, I'll say it again. I am a fan of Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot and what they're doing for this team and the culture change that they are getting. I said last week, part of the, we're not going to hear the word rebuild. We're not going to try and set expectations despite the fact that we're playing with one arm tied behind our back. That's a culture change. They are not accepting any excuses. They've got tons. They've got plenty. They're not accepting any excuses. That's a culture change. And I love it. I love it. So let me go down here a little bit. We got some conversation on this. Because there's already some back and forth coming in on Facebook and YouTube about Desmond Ritter. Anthony Shea comes in and says Ritter needs to be pushed into the starting group for the look and also the very low stat line from Mariota. Our defense held us up. Defense in a running game, for sure. Won this game. Yeah, you won this one despite lackluster quarterback play. It's funny. I mean, the stat line was really, really bad, but I didn't feel like Mariota played that horribly. Maybe it's because he made a couple big plays, but it's generous to say he was okay. You get the win, which kind of overshadows the bad stat line. If you look at his stat line, it's bad. 7 of 19, 139 yards and interception. His quarterback rating is 41.4 in that game. That's atrocious. But it's strange. The eye test, I didn't feel like it was all on him in this game. But yeah, I think, I'm not saying, Ritter needs to start, but I think it's time to, warm up the burner a little bit when we're having this conversation, for sure. And Shane Sargent comes in, and this coaching staff is so much better than previous years. So nice to have a head coach that has an identity instead of a manager and leader of men. Shane, why not both? I think, people have asked me from outside of Atlanta, what do you think of Arthur Smith? I said, well, I think he's a player's coach. I think the players respect him, but they also know he's in charge. He's the boss. You can have a player's coach. Remember Jim Mora Jr. when he was here in Atlanta? He had some success in Atlanta. He was a player's coach, but he wasn't necessarily in charge. The inmates kind of started running the asylum a little bit under his watch, and he lost discipline of that team. There's no question who's in charge of this team. Arthur Smith is in charge of this team, and he's got the backing of his general manager. He's got the backing of his owner. They've brought in, it goes back to, will we ever see Deion Jones play for this team again? This conversation I had with Sam on YouTube. I'm not sure that we will. Will Deion Jones, is he going to fit in? Is he going to buy in? Will he play again if he comes off injured reserve? Maybe. I'm not convinced that he comes back this year because this is Arthur Smith's team. And if you don't like it, GTFU or whatever it is. Oh, get out. Nobody is untouchable. Not Julio Jones, not Matt Ryan. Not that they were doing anything, wrong, but this is Arthur Arthur Smith's team. Sorry, I'm fighting a cold a little bit. Oh, that's embarrassing. It's hard to do this by yourself sometimes, and I was way up on the chat. Need audio, no sound. Okay. Well, let's just start over here. Let's see. I can go back to where it was, and I'll just start here. I just think integrate him in the lineup. I'm not saying bench Mariota outright, just mix the looks up. And I agree with that. If Felipe Franks can get some time, can get some snaps, you should be able to find a snap for Desmond Ritter. I mean, think back to when Michael Vick was first drafted. He didn't start right away, but they found some packages for him where he'd come in every once in a while. Usually short yardage packages, just trying to integrate him into the lineup some. I think with his mobility, now you're still trying to win games and not just break in a quarterback. But when you're talking about a guy who was 7 of 19 with a 41 passer rating, how much are you really going to upset him? How much are you going to lose if you do try and work in Desmond Ritter? I'm not sure how much Arthur Smith wants to hear the noise. But again, I'm not sure how much he cares if he does throw in Ritter for a series. So yeah, we might try and work him in here. I would try and again, I've mentioned earlier, I don't know how much you heard or not. I said I would seriously start thinking about it, about figuring out how to get him a series or two. Again, I like what Anthony says here. I'm not saying bench him outright, but I'm reading through this chat. It's just embarrassing. I apologize. You hit the mute button and then you toggle it. My dad is the first one to tell me the cough switch is on. Yeah. You ever do that where you're filming something and all you do is you get the play gets ready to start and you toggle it wrong and you turn it off and you end up filming the floor and you get up to the next play and you stop it here. Ugh, one of those days. Falcons executed much better than I did this morning. Let's get back into the chat now that we're a little bit behind here. Franklin Peterson says, what's going on with Kyle Pitts? Seem to underuse him, but you're 2-2. Franklin, this could go back into the Marcus Mariota discussion. When you are having a bunch of 3-and-outs, you only completed 7 passes, man. He got his targets. They were trying to force it to him. He had 4 targets. Drake London had 7 targets. So they were 3-11 on passes into Kyle Pitts and Drake London. But again, you're only 7 all along. So you were able to win this game through a much, much better offensive line, a good running game, and a much better defense than you were playing with last year. Again, that was a thing of beauty with that drive where they just say, hey, we're not throwing the ball. Let's just run it. 10 plays, 75 yards, all on the ground. And that doesn't happen in the NFL. That just does not happen in the NFL, let alone maybe to close out a game after you've already beaten a team into the ground, but not in a tight game in the third quarter. That was seriously impressive. Joe Cannon Cummins says, Arnold Ebiketie needs to be the starter. There's no question or argument to be had. I think he's still getting the majority of the time. What I've seen we're in 4 games now. So what I've seen the last 3 games, Joe, Ade Ogundeji is coming out as the starter. The other team drives down, and as soon as they cross midfield, here comes Ebiketie. I feel like he's the starter by snaps, if not by name. And one of the uglies for me on this team right now, I'm just going to cough. I'm afraid to hit the mute button again. One of the uglies on here is the edge play from Ogundeji. Again, I hate to keep picking on him, but he's being targeted in the running game. He doesn't offer much in the pass rush. It's like, oh, he's in there for run support. Well, then he doesn't need to be in there because he's not supporting the run either. He's being targeted. I've got, a page and a half of notes on here, and more than once I put in here, they went after him on both sides because they flipped sides. He played on the right side, he played on the left side, and they targeted him. Wherever Ogundeji was, they were making the runs. So, again, I think Ebiketie's doing a better job on the edge, in run defense anyway. So all around. Now, here is something that, we came in last year talking about. This pass rush will be better by default because it statistically cannot get any worse. Ebiketie had 3 quarterback hits yesterday. 3. Okay. That sounds good. Why is that important? Because starting edge, who started 14 games last year for the Atlanta Falcons, Stephen Means, had 2 quarterback hits last year in the same game all season. No, I don't mean he only had 2 in a game once. I mean, he only had 2 quarterback hits all season, and they both came in the same game against the Jets when they were in London. So yesterday, Ebiketie had more hits on the quarterback than Stephen Means had last year in 14 games as a starter. That's just unbelievable. I kept referring to it, and I keep bringing it up because I called it statistically impossible. Stephen Means had a statistically impossible season. You can't be out there and have that little production. It's really, I say it's like getting a 0 on the SAT. It's almost as hard to get a 0 on the SAT as it is to get a perfect score because you get points for not answering. So in order to, you basically have to know every answer to get a 0. That's how hard it is. That was Stephen Means. Albert Knopper said, "Morning, Scott. Great day and bad day yesterday, right?" Yeah, the Broncos. We'll hit on the Broncos a little bit. I think I'll be able to make it after choking through this episode. At least when I do my edits on my podcast on falconspodcast.com, that big flat line on my audio line, I can cut those. That'll be nice and easy to do. Let me see here. There was one question I wanted to hit in here. Maybe it's from Anthony right here. I got to say before I forget, Grady Jarrett is playing like he's on fire. Anthony, Grady Jarrett's playing like an all-pro, not just a Pro Bowler, an all-pro. He is so good. Nick and I talked about, the aspects of team building. And okay, if you're in a rebuild, one of your pieces that you can, that is still a tradable piece is Grady Jarrett. So like that's true if this were Madden, if I was playing a video game. But Grady Jarrett means more to this team than just being a good player. He's Falcons, royalty. He's a Falcons legacy. He's a beloved figure in the community. The fans love it. So every once in a while, you got to remember, listen, this is a customer service-based business. We can't just get rid of Grady Jarrett because he's a leader on the field. He plays his ass off. And now, Anthony, it's not just the 3-4 end where he is being out there. And because I think you've got better edge play, I think Dean Pease is more comfortable in dropping a 4-man front and using 2 defensive ends and moving either like Anthony Rush or Taquan Graham and playing a 2-man front with him and Grady Jarrett. Abdullah Anderson was in there as well with Grady Jarrett because Grady Jarrett is wreaking havoc. He has just been phenomenal. And all pro. Another one of those guys. Joe Cannon says, having Graham next to Grady has really benefited both of them. Taquan Graham has been spectacular. Okay, there's another one of my goods. Another one of my goods is the super sophomores, the second-year guys that last year it was Kyle Pitts as a class of 2021, and that was kind of it. Ogundeji played, Taquan Graham played, but they didn't do a whole lot. This year, Taquan Graham is playing at a plus level, not just an average level. He's playing at a plus level. Let me see what, if I remember right from PFF, I believe he was graded top 10 so far. Let me see what PFF says, because y'all have heard me talk about him, and we talk about PFF a lot, use them with a grain of salt. Everybody grades differently. It's not always the same grader. So far, I've been pretty pleased with what I've seen from PFF and the Atlanta Falcons. So they've got Taquan Graham as the 19th best defensive lineman out of 115. That's good. Like I said, he's not just playing an average level. He's playing a plus level DL. If you figure there's at least 2 defensive linemen on every team, that's 64. 64 starters. He's 19 out of 64 starters. That's an upper half for Taquan. The other second-year guy that is stepping up big is Richie Grant. Richie Grant had kind of a quiet season last year, wasn't necessarily trusted a whole lot. Now, Dean Peace's system is supposed to be pretty intense, so he wasn't used a ton. Richie Grant has been spectacular on run protection, on pass coverage, and on that 13-10 field goal that made it 13. He damn near blocked the field goal and got in there. So on special teams too, Richie Grant was a guy I was thrilled they drafted. I was thrilled they were actually able to trade down and get a pick out of it. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe I missed on this one because it was a little bit of a slow start. And he's kind of an older guy. He came into the league at 24 years old, so he wasn't like a 20-year-old rookie like Kyle Pitts. So he has stepped up big. Speaking of PFF, they have him 7th at safety after 3 games. So, and I based on what I saw yesterday, and like I said, I think PFF has done a really good job with their grades. The only one I really disagree with so far is I think they've undergraded Caleb McGarry. I think Caleb McGarry has been really, really good, and he's got kind of a middling grade. I can live with that. That's a slight disagreement. I think that Richie Grant coming in at 7, and I thought he played probably his best game of the season against the Browns. Let's see here. Before we get going, got about 10 minutes left or so since I wasted 10 minutes on mute button. Thanks for sticking with me, everybody. I want to hit on some of the concerns I have. One of the concerns I have, and I won't necessarily call it the ugly. I mentioned Mariota's stat line. That's one thing. But the offensive line isn't all well for me right now, despite rushing for 202 yards, protecting Mariota fairly well. I think Drew Dahlman is having a problem right now at center. Every time I watched him, if he was ever head up on a defensive lineman, he was getting driven backwards 2 and 3 yards into the backfield. You'd see on a consistent basis, if they were running a stretch play going out to the tackle, Dahlman's getting knocked back, and the running back, whether it was Peterson, whether it was Huntley, whether it was Algier, is having to bounce it wide earlier than they would like to, because Dahlman was getting manhandled up front. And it didn't matter who it was. It was Perrion Winfrey to begin with, and then it was 96. It was later on, it was someone else. Drew Dahlman is having problems right now handling a physical defensive front. How is that going to hold up? How are they going to scheme against that? One of the ways that he should be able to get better is what I like what he's able to do is his mobility is still pretty good. So he's able to chip down, help one of the guards, either help left with Eli Wilkinson, help right with Lindstrom, and then able to shuffle up to the second level. He's decent on pulling, so he still has decent mobility, but he's really, really struggled head up against the bigger defensive lineman. That was one of the bigger concerns. One of the bigger concerns that I had. Again, the defense stood up so many times. When the Browns went 16 plays and got a touchdown out of it, the next one is the last thing you want to see when you're a defense. What the Falcons do on the next drive? 3 and out. 3 and out. On the next drive, the Falcons were able to stand up, and I think there was just a field goal following that off the interception in a bad territory. They were able to hold them to a field goal. When the Browns were driving, okay, we scored. The Falcons scored. They took the lead, but there's 2 minutes left. Oh no, we know what that usually means. I feel pretty good about this. They're able to get pressure. Grady Jarrett comes in for a sack. On the play where D. Alford gets the game-clinching interception, Ebiketie is in harassing the quarterback. So this defense is very, very good. But yeah, on the good, I said on the good, Taquan Graham, he's good reads, good athleticism, just good all around. The goal line awareness by Cordero Patterson to be able to reach out and tap the top of the pylon as he's going in. Richie Grant, physical and run support, solid in coverage. He had a little bit of a bad angle on Chubb's fourth quarter touchdown run. I can live with that one. If you watch that one again, I'm almost positive Ogundeji was on the edge on that side, and Chubb got a free run into up the left side of it. And then one of the phrases I got used to hearing that I really liked hearing over and over again was pressure from Arnold Ebiketie. Heard that one a lot. The bad Marcus Mariota's line, 7-19 for 141 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts, first play, first drive, 25-yard catch, and then Bupkis. That was it. It's like, okay, they're getting involved. Here it is. And then that was it. It kind of was like that last week too, where he had 84 yards in the first half and then finished with 95 yards for the game. So, how much of that is quarterback play? How much of it is dictated by the other team's defense? Because, when I can run the ball 10 plays for 75 yards and a touchdown, I don't need to pass it. So, good on the Falcons for being able to make those adjustments when needed and having the personnel to just run it down their damn throats. I'm going to get out of here. We've got, we're in for about 30 minutes, and I think you at least got 10 minutes or so of me actually talking, and then, 10 minutes of watching my mouth move as I had the mute button. Hit the comments and questions afterwards. I want to have a good discussion on this. Let me drop the YouTube link for the Facebook folks as well, because I do think it's easier to have this conversation after the fact on YouTube. It's easier for me to follow it than it is on Facebook. So again, good win. The Falcons are 2-2. They'll take on the Buccaneers for first place in the NFC South. This is a win. I'm not sure how many people that around the country that they expected the Falcons to win, but it's definitely a good win. And that's two they've won as underdogs. They were an underdog, a road dog to the Seahawks. They are a road dog to Cleveland, 2-0. And again, I want to say that the Falcons under Arthur Smith are 9-4 in one-score games. This is a good staff, y'all. This is a good staff. And I'm looking forward to watching them play with a full deck next year instead of one arm tied behind their back. The offseason should be a lot of fun, but this team is fun to watch grow and come together. Some of the young players, watching Troy Anderson get some time out there. Richie Grant as a second year, Taquan Graham, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, AJ Terrell. This young core of all 25 and under players is a lot of fun to watch. So it could be a really interesting season, no matter the record, as this team builds for the future. So on that note, y'all, thanks for hanging with me and sticking with me and not just hitting the exit button. And after my technical difficulties, we'll be back Wednesday morning. Nick and I will be back. We'll break down the game a little more in depth, and we'll look forward to the next game again as your Falcons go for first place. So until that, we'll see you next time.